All right, here we go. We have Big Gipp and James Worthy. They just dropped a new project, Gipp and Worthy. Welcome to VladTV.
Man.
Thank you, King.
Thank you, King.
Oh, yeah, man. Listen, me and Gipp, we've been running into each other for a couple of decades now.
Yeah.
You know, here and there, all over the country at hip-hop events. But this is our first actual sit-down interview. So what we're going to do is we're going to get into Gipp's story first. And then we're going to get into James' story. Then we're going to kind of merge the two at the end of the interview.
Let's do it.
Let's go.
All right. So, Gipp, let's start with you.
Yes, sir.
Born and raised in Atlanta.
Yes.
Okay. What was Atlanta like in the 80s?
Like the Hustables. I could give you that kind of description because during that time, you know, Atlanta was changing. UPS came to town. The airport itself really hired a lot of us, a lot of my community, and I just think that black people as a whole, they started growing. They started buying houses. A lot of them went to the AU Center, and a lot of them was from the King situation. So a lot of them understood family values, and I think that was the time that we just, as a race in Atlanta, like we really became stronger financially. You know, it really became a power because we had so many things going on. From, you know, we had Hank Aaron. There was a big, huge leader in our city. You also had still, you know, the civil rights leaders still doing a lot in the city. You had Andrew Young bringing the Olympics here. It was just, a lot of the stuff that was going on in the 80s really built up for such of the impact of the 90s because it was about family, and you had just situations like UPS, big companies like that really came into the community and made it accessible to have homes in Atlanta. So, yeah, I grew up in a house. Both of my parents really had everything I've ever wanted in life just because of my background, you know. So growing up in the 80s, I saw a lot of what was going on as far as you saw the drug culture come about, and you saw where it tore some families apart, but then other families were strong enough to make it through it. And I just think Atlanta as a whole, you know, we found ourselves as a city in the 80s.
Well, I mean, you mentioned this. You grew up in a two-parent home in a stable house. You yourself, when, you know, the streets started doing their thing in Atlanta, did you ever get mixed up in that, or is the type of family you grew up in, you kind of steered away from that?
No, I mean that's the illusion of Atlanta. Yeah, I got messed up. Yeah, I got into the streets. I mean, the streets was it was so in everybody's face during that time. I remember when I first left middle school, and I got into high school. It was called Woodland High School in East Point. And I remember I walked into the bathroom and I saw an older kid standing at the stall. And he was all dressed down, you know, the whole Fila suit, the Fila shoes, you know what I mean? But at the same time, that was the first time I seen a kid actually snort cocaine. And I was like, wow, like, what is that? And that's when I started equating the ghetto kids or the kids from the projects. They were all doing something different than we were. You know what I mean? My mother at that time was probably laying my clothes out. And I was like, oh, I don't want my clothes laid out. I want to wear my own clothes. You know what I mean? But these kids were coming to school, and they had all these kind of, you know, Nike, hip-hop. They had big chains. And I was just like, okay, I stay here, and they stay there, but they always got a pocket full of money. And I think that intrigued me to go find out what the other kids were doing in the projects. And I think me coming from a two-parent household, it made me make decisions in those situations. It made me make better decisions. Like so many times that I think me just having a father and being scared of him, it made me walk away from situations that ended up putting some of my friends in jail or getting killed. So I think the streets was something that no kid could really not get involved with during those times because it was almost like something like, well, my parents don't know about it, so I want to get involved. And then plus, man, I could make me a little money. so I think that was the biggest thing that I think that was the only thing that I think my parents couldn't save me from. My want to be accepted by the streets and my want to understand the streets.
Okay, so the Goodie Mob as a group, how exactly did it form?
Well, Goodie Mob performed simply because, okay, at the time, Cujo and Timo were the actual Goodie Mob Lumberjacks. Okay, Gipp was in a group called East Point Chain Gang, which had Cool Breeze in that group also. So I was in a group, and CeeLo was a solo artist. So when we got the actual deal for Outkast, and they just started working on the deal, I remember I went to go see Cujo over on the west side of Atlanta, and he was kind of rapping against this young kid, and this young kid happened to be CeeLo. And this kid like kind of stepped back and stopped rapping and started singing toward Cujo. And I was like, wow, I never saw that before. So I ran back to the dungeon and was like, yo, I just saw this kid named CeeLo. He does something special. And we brought him over to the dungeon. Boom. We're starting to work on the Outkast album. At this time, Cujo and Timo goes in and records a song called Call It a While. And me and CeeLo recorded a song called Get Up, Get Out, and Get Something. Well, once the actual album was turned in, L.A. Reid kind of came to us and was like, yo, like, who are these kids? And Rico and Organized Noise, they said, yo, instead of y'all going in as solo artists or being broke up, we'll just name the group itself Goodie Mob. And you guys are a part of the Goodie Mob, which made everybody a part of the Goodie Mob. So with that being said, we signed to LaFace as Goodie Mob. Cujo and Timo were the Goodie Mob Lumberjacks, and me and CeeLo, we kind of joined the group. And once we joined the group, they took Lumberjacks off, and it was just Goodie Mob. So that's how Goodie Mob came about, because because Outkast, their third single was Get Up, Get Out, and Get Something, and we got such a big reaction from that LA felt like that we should sign with LaFace. So that's actually how it came together.
Right, because I remember I interviewed Organized Noise, and I guess there was some talk about CeeLo being part of Outkast because he was younger. He was more their age. You guys were a little older.
Yes. What it was CeeLo and 3000 went to alternative school together. So they actually knew each other, him, Big Boy, all of them actually knew each other. CeeLo and the Outkast are actually 3 years younger than us. So we like their OGs. So to a certain extent, CeeLo just always hung with older cats. So he was kind of known in the streets to always be the young cat with the older cats. And he was about his business. So, he was just respected in another area where they were not in that area. You know what I mean? They were going to Tri-Cities and stuff like that. CeeLo was already kind of like, he had already jumped off the porch.
Well, in 1994, Outkast's debut album comes out.
Yes.
Southern Playalistic, Cadillac Music. And like you said, Get Up, Get Out is on that album, one of the standout songs. And that album almost kind of introduced a whole new sound to hip-hop, in terms of Organized Noise production, the way Outkast was rapping. And I remember even when I talked to Organized Noise, I had mentioned that some of the style kind of reminded me of like hieroglyphics and everything. They're like, oh yeah, that was a big influence. They're like, oh shit, no one really picks up on that.
Yes.
But I remember, being on the West Coast, I'm like, okay, like we can relate to these dudes because they kind of sound like Bay Area dudes in a way.
Yes.
Early on.
Yes, early on. That first album, yes, totally sounded like Far Side. Everything that came out of the Bay that was hip hop. Because it was, the Bay had that free sounding hippie type hip hop. So it was like it was easily something that we kind of used in our own formula because it was just such. To us, expression in art and poetry was our stronghold, and I feel like that's totally the path that organized noise kind of ran us down. They always felt like if you do it this way, your career lasts longer. You know what I mean? So I think that 25 years later, I think they was right.
Yep. Well, then that next year, 95, Goodie Mob releases Soul Food.
Goodie Mob comes.
Yep. Album goes gold. Does it go platinum after a while?
Goes gold, went platinum. Yeah.
And then went platinum eventually. Cell Therapy was the single. Huge song.
Yes.
Huge song in hip hop, especially because like that beat didn't sound like anything that ever really you heard before.
Yeah, the closest thing to Cell Therapy's beat that I could feel like that was hip hop, Ja Rule the Damager. His first single. That's the closest thing to it.
Come clean. Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yep.
So like we felt like we had something special because in our eyes it was only one thing out there, and that was Ja Rule the Damager that had anything like it. And as that record impacted, our record impacted also just by being its only kind at that time.
Yeah, I mean, and that song, even today, I looked it up, it's 32 million views if you look at Spotify and YouTube put together.
Yeah, what's so crazy about it, Vlad, is that the song exploded again over the pandemic. What we learned was during the pandemic, Cell Therapy was probably the only song that was kind of like Googled more than it had ever had been, because it was the only song that represented or it could even speak on what we was living at the time, and that was the pandemic. And it was funny to us because I was like, damn, after 25 years after this song come out, people finally understood what we mean about Cell Therapy. So for that record to be where it is right now, I hadn't looked at the numbers. That is incredible. And I know this because of the pandemic, man. It was it really had a resurgence, that record.
Well, my second favorite song on that album is Dirty South.
Dirty South.
With Big Boy and Cool Breeze. And
yes.
Was that the first time someone said Dirty South on a record?
Yes, that's the first time somebody ever said Dirty South on the record. Shout out to Cool Breeze. Yeah, man. And what's so funny about that record, Dirty South, that song and Cell Therapy were the last two songs recorded for Soul Food.
Wow.
So that song was very special because it really identified and really showed people a really actual depiction of what we had felt like we lived and came up in the South. Because of the actual, all of the civil rights and the things that we had learned, we know a lot of things that happened during those times that other people don't. You know what I mean? So we always understood that we had to represent a certain way when we spoke, and I think Dirty South was a way for us to speak our truth.
Yeah, and it wasn't until years later, because I didn't go to Atlanta until 2010 or something. 2004 was the first time I went to Atlanta. So when I first heard the song, I didn't know who the Red Dogs were. But years later, I come to find out that was like the police drug crew, right? That would go and bust drug dealers.
Yes, sir. Yes. They were notorious. And the same lady that was running the Red Dogs during that time is the same lady that's running the Memphis police station that just had the incident in Memphis with the kid.
Oh, with Tyree Nichols who got beat up. Oh,
that's the same lady that used to run the Red Dogs in Atlanta, and she took her operation and went to Memphis with it. So you see that that kind of mentality kind of spreads with the person that runs that kind of unit.
Well, yeah, I actually looked it up. The Red Dogs were actually disbanded in 2011 after they got sued for using excessive force during a 2009 raid at a gay bar, of all places.
Yes, that's really when it got out of hand.
Right.
When they put their hands on the wrong people.
Right. Right. The gay community said, oh, no. You can go beat up drug dealers, but you can't beat us up. We're going to shut you down.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. She got tossed right out the city.
Okay. Well, that same year, that's when a lot of chaos started to happen in hip hop. The first of which was the Source Awards.
Yes.
When Suge Knight took the stage and said, for all you rappers, who don't want the CEO all up in your videos dancing, come to death row.
Yeah.
And you guys were actually in the audience
Yes.
when this was happening.
Yes.
And this is, Tupac was still in jail at the time. I think he had
Yes,
already signed a death row,
Pac-
but he wasn't there yet.
No, he was in jail. He was upstate New York then. So I just give the depiction of this. It was just like being in prison and the first time you walked out on the yard to meet everybody. And the reason why I say that is because all of us were so young and full of just testosterone, and all of us trying to represent where we was from. And the second part of it was, this was the first time that all of us saw each other in the flesh. Most of us just had seen each other on BET, and I think that was the first time all of us walked into the room. Because I think the Source before that, it wasn't as much success in hip hop. It was still like the older, late 90s, late 80s and 90s. But like when we got there in 95, 96, I think you have so much success with Bad Boy. You have so much success going on in the West, and you have this new emerging success coming from the South. That I think it was just such a gumbo of different personalities and people doing different things. Because you had Florida doing their thing at that time. 69 Boys had the biggest crossover smash with Tootsie Roll. You had the things going on with Jay Prince. You had Big Mike being up for Lyricist of the Year, representing the rap a lot. You had Outkast up for Album of the Year. So I think that it was just such a pivotal year that it was the first year that Southern hip-hop was kind of like thrust into the spotlight. And like Dre said, we had something to say.
Right, because after Outkast won Best New Rap Group at the Source Awards, and I think people were people booing at that point?
Yeah, they was booing. They was booing us because at that time, I just think we was just so new, and they didn't know exactly where our audience was, because it was just such a East-West Coast situation at that time that I think that people didn't even account the southern part of the United States as being in even the room of hip-hop, because they looked at the southern region as, we got Ghetto Boys over there in Texas, yeah, but then Luke Skywalker really runs the southern half of the United States at that time, so his type of rap and what he represented was the strip culture, which is totally our culture, but something that was new to hip-hop. So I don't think that the hip-hop vanguards, they really respected what Luke was doing and what he was bringing to hip-hop. But if you look at it now, 25 years later, hip-hop is kind of like, the strip culture lives in hip-hop house now. It lives in it. It's like, so we're just still waiting on the respect from, the industry itself, because as far as the culture and as far as the records, hey man, we sold records, and hey man, our people loved it.
Yeah, when Andre 3000 took the stage with people boo, and he's like, the South got something to say, you were right there behind him.
Yes, and that's the reason why, Vlad, we all walked with that chip on our shoulder, because we was in that room together. So being in that room together, it just made us come back home and just say, hey man, we're gonna do the most, we're gonna do as much, the best, and the most far out music that we can do, because we felt like we didn't want to be bottled in that just house of hip hop. We wanted to be much more than that. So, once we came back home and George Clinton started coming and hanging out with us, it just gave us the confidence to be bigger than hip hop. So that's when you started seeing the outfits. That's when you started seeing us doing rock songs and so many things that hip hop wasn't into. We kind of like did it first from our origin.
Well, that same year, Jermaine Dupri was having a party in Atlanta, and you were there.
Yes.
And Suge Knight pulled up.
Yeah.
Puffy was there.
Yeah.
And then all hell breaks loose.
Yes.
Can you say what happened?
At the end of the day, the West showed up. The West showed up. And of course, like, now that we know 25 years later, like, it was a whole beef going on between the executives and not really the artists. You know what I mean?
Right.
So this whole ego vibrato thing that was going on between him and Puff was just competition, really. But it was competition that led to someone getting killed. And I think that being in that situation and being there and seeing the aftermath of it, it kind of, I'm understanding now that didn't do nothing but put more fire, on the wood when it came to the reason why Big and the reason why Pac winded up getting killed. It was something that I felt like if two people had kind of like shut up all the hecklers and just had a real conversation, I think that death wouldn't have been something that came to that party that night. And because I know Jermaine Dupri never throws anything that has that kind of, vibration in the air. So for that to happen like that, it kind of like made everybody go dark for a minute, because it was what's going to happen next.
Well, yeah. I mean, after the dust settled, Suge's homie, Big Jake, was dead. And the story goes that Puffy's bodyguard, Wolf, was the one who did it, who's now dead as well, which is why we can speak about it. No one really knows for sure, but this is kind of like the story that's been circulating for the last 25 years.
Yeah.
And which ultimately escalated things between Suge and Puffy even further, because now there's a dead body involved in the conflict. It's not just, talking shit on stage, whatever. I mean, hip hop has always done that, but that doesn't usually turn deadly. It just turns into more records back and forth and whatever else. But now we have a dead body in the mix, and things are kind of more heated. And then that next year in 1996, there's the Soul Train Music Awards. Tupac is now out of prison, on death row.
Right.
And was that the night that you met Tupac?
No. That was just the night that we was in the middle of them seeing each other, I think, for the first time. I think we had just given an award to Jagged Edge. And we went to commercial break. When we went to commercial break, in the back of the auditorium, here comes Pac with Suge and 1,000 Bloods and Crips. And they walk in doing the commercial part, and it was like, he walks right down the aisle, up the stage, and right to the backstage after Big. So it's a picture out where they see us standing there, and Pac walks up to us. He's talking to us, and in the picture, you can see Pac looking past us. When he's looking past us, he sees Big standing over there. So the whole situation was, we was in between Pac, Suge, Death Row, and on the other side of us was Bad Boy. The only thing that stopped it being a physical altercation was the man himself walked out, Khalid, the old man, you know what I mean? So when Don came out, he instantly told Suge to come here. And Suge went and talked to Don Canese real quick, and you know how the West do, it's one or two words, and it's like, you right. and Suge dispersed. They dispersed, but they really had Big in a situation, because if they wanted to really hurt Big and hurt everybody with them at that time, they had the numbers. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. I mean, I've interviewed multiple people around the situation. Lance on Rivera was there. Yeah. He talked about that. And C. Gutta, Biggie's homie, was there.
Yeah.
And Lance, in our interview, told C. Gutta to pull his gun out and shoot Suge first.
Oh, yeah.
And that's when things started to kind of become a little more serious at that point. It's not just a bunch of talking. Like, now there's a gun pulled, and there's a direction on who actually to shoot. And, that's when things started to kind of calm down from what I understand.
And Vlad, this was all like in the middle of set change, Don Canese, people running around, it's like all this shit going on, and this is going on at the same time. So it was like, it was a pivotal point that the same thing that happened at Jaguars could have happened backstage at the BET Awards. If Don Cornelius didn't show his face, I think it would have escalated to that point. So I just really just look at it like music. This is the music business. This is not the streets. And I think that even us, even Pac, even Big, me coming from that class, I don't even think they thought that it would escalate to that point. I just think that we was doing some hip hop shit and doing things that hip hop had never seen before. Because of course, like you said, like hip hop was built on mixtapes and going back and forth, Busy Bee against Kool Moe Dee. It was built on that. But I just think that Pac having so much built up anger about what happened to him in New York, I just think that he pinned it on whoever was closest to him. And I just think that it had to be either it was going to be an ending for something great or an ending for something bad. And I think it just ended on the second half for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very complex story because, like I said, I interviewed Lance Unrivera, who was Biggie's business partner this whole time. And what he told me recently, and this part's not even out yet, which was interesting, was that when Pac got shot at Quad Studios, right, when he went up the elevator, he went into a room, into a studio that Biggie was not at. It was a bunch of people like Lil Sean. It was a Lil Sean recording session. And when he went up in that room, and he had already been shot and everything, he went and hid his gun in the studio. Because remember, he tried to shoot back, and I think he may have shot himself, whatever. He hid his gun in that studio and then went back downstairs. The police came, arrested everyone. And Un told me that right after that happened, Pac called Big and said, hey, can you send someone to go get my gun before the police find it? So Big went and got his people together and went and got the gun back. And they were actually on good terms this whole time. Yeah. And the way Un describes it, it wasn't until Pac went to jail and Suge kind of got in his ear and kind of used his own biases and everything to kind of put a battery in his back. That's when Pac comes out, and now there's beef with Biggie and everything else like that. But right after the shooting, him and Big were still cool. They were still friends. Like, it was a situation that may have gone very differently if Suge didn't get involved.
Yeah, I think I'm a Taurus, man, so I understand big fella. And I understand Big Sugar. And I just think this is one of them times that he probably sits by himself and regrets that. You know what I mean? Because, when we in the battle of competition, it's about us beating our enemy. And sometimes we use different individuals to pull a certain thing off. And I think Suge had a lot to do with the way Pac was acting towards everybody during that time. And I think that he didn't really, I don't think Pac really started to regret some of the stuff until, after a lot of the stuff came out. Like, I was one of the first to hear Hit 'Em Up, me and Lisa Left Eye and the Goodie Mob. And to hear it for the first time, it was jaw-dropping, you know what I mean? Because I never heard, I heard No Vaseline, I heard, I heard diss records, but when, you started off with a bunch of wife, I was just like, Jesus, I was like, that was cold, but then you thinking like, back then everybody like, oh, he just making that shit up, but then 25 years later, folk telling you they seen folk around there. So it's kind of like, okay, then damn near, Shawty gave him the recipe to do that song. Because you went over there as being Big's wife, and you went and messed with this man. So you damn near gave him the fuel to flame that fire. You know what I mean? So for it not to, one person saying it's not true the whole time, but then now we find out 25 years later, it was true. So he was only being honest in his his musical perception of what was going on at the time, and he used everything around him as a way to get up under other people's skin, and he didn't have no holds barred. But I think that, you know, when you do things like that, you can't do nothing. You can never kind of like figure out what kind of energy gonna come back your way. And I think just think about it, like the situation that took you out of here really didn't have nothing to do with music. It was just the energy that you was kind of, you know, playing with. You can't play with that kind of energy and not expect for it to have a bad reaction on the one that put it in the air.
Now, weren't you around Pac in Atlanta when there was just a bunch of incidents that happened like one after another?
A lot of incidents with Pac. I mean, we had one incident where we was at the AU, and that's when Pac was doing Above the Rim. He was Birdie. I remember he came to the concert. He was still had the shit on. He still had the whole outfit on. Like, you know, straight off the plane. He late. He get there. I mean, parental advisory was opening up for him that night. So we all was in there, and it was a crazy night. Some of our folk got locked up. Then Pac came in, and then they was like, yo, Pac, you only got, 10, 15 minutes, man. It's college, man. It's the AU. You can't, it's not a concert hall. He jumped on stage and said, hey, man, if they stop the concert, we're going to ride in this motherfucker. and he did it. You know what I mean? Like, he did that, and he provoked that kind of emotion out there all the time whenever people told him he couldn't do certain things. He left there. We went to an after party. I remember a girl did something to him. You know, he throws his beer into the audience, hit a girl in the face. Then some of the guys in Atlanta was like, yo, we got to beat Pac up because he around here tripping. You know, and then he was known to just be on the east side. Like, he would be on the east side just walking to the store, smoking a cigarette, him and his brothers. Everybody, he just lived so normal. And the greatest thing about him was that all he ever wanted to do is be understood. You know, like, and you know, when people even ask me about why do you feel like he one of the greatest, is because his skill set was higher than everybody's during that time. As far as like knowing how to really act, you know what I mean? His skill set as far as being able to talk to Hollywood without a manager being involved, because he understood the craft and the art, you know what I mean? So I never saw nobody just that could walk in the room and command that type of attention, you know what I mean? That he would command. You know, and then the girls loved him. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, it's one thing to be great at one part of this section we call the music industry, but it's another thing when you've mastered it all, and you can come with a record like, you know, California Love, then come back with another record like Brenda's Had a Baby. It's like, his writing ability was just so far apart from other people during that time, because if you go back and just look at a lot of our records, only people that kind of went that kind of way was probably Outkast, Goodie Mob, and Pac, but other people during that time, they was really about hardcore hip hop. So it's about me being better than you. So it was just the things that I think the community of hip hop was dealing with, that we kind of strayed away from that, and we went the other route and just dealt with human life and people's actual feelings, you know, about life. You know what I mean? So, and I think that's why you got stuff just like Soul Food or those kind of records, because we kind of was sitting back and watching the energy of the East and West Coast thing, and we was like, that's the reason why we can't go that route. Is God is in every man of blackness, and we got to calm the beast before we inflame the beast. And I think that if you look at it during that time, while they doing all this fighting, we were getting stronger in how we dealt with the audience and how we presented our music. And when they destroyed two empires, we made ours stronger. And I tell people all the time, the difference between the South, then the West, or the East is that we raised our kids. We never shunned them. And that's the reason why Atlanta has been so dominant for the last 25 years.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think 3 years before then, that's when Pac shot those two cops in Atlanta, the off-duty cops,
Yeah,
and he ended up beating that case.
he beat that case.
And during that time, we're talking about, I mean, this happened 93. By the time the case went to trial, I think it was maybe about 95, 96.
Yeah,
A black man in the South
Yeah.
shooting two white cops
right,
and getting away with it
right.
was unheard of in America.
It was unheard of, and it was something that I think the hip hop community had never seen, and I think that incident could have only happened in Atlanta where he got off, and I think that also that's where he ran into trouble in other cities when he got into trouble because it wasn't that kind of a leadership in behind him that could help him guide him through those situations. And being in Atlanta, he was totally protected by the old guard when it came to that situation because just how it happened, you know.
Well, later that year in 96, Tupac gets killed in Las
Yeah.
Vegas. You know, I interviewed Keefe D, who was the last surviving member in the car that actually did the shooting. Did you ever watch that interview?
Yeah, I watched it.
Being as close as you were to Tupac and watching a firsthand account of how he died, what did you think?
It was his fault. He got himself killed. You know, Vlad, you know, you live in the West. You know, it's just certain things it's gonna happen if you get involved with it. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's the culture. It's like, there's nothing you can do about it. You know what I mean? And I just think that night he was on one, out of his mind a little bit. You know what I mean? And you know, he because in a sober mind, I know he wouldn't have moved like that. You know what I mean? So I'm knowing that he probably was already out of his mind, and you know this shit crunk up, and he wanted to get involved and show everybody he just as much about it as they are. But at the end of the day, man, that wasn't your business. That wasn't your business, and you put your hands on an active member of the South Side. And me knowing knowing the South Side as a neighborhood, they gonna get down about it. And cause you know after he got killed, bro, like we was in LA a lot. So I remember we got back to LA and we had a show in LA, and I went to a Cypress Hill show. It was like a Cypress Hill and Guru show. And they shot up Guru BMW. You know what I mean? It was like the West was like anybody from New York getting it. You know what I mean? So it was just a time period that after he got killed, it was like the rage really when it should have been off Big, because Big them didn't have nothing to do with him getting killed. It just seemed like when Pac got killed, it was like everybody in the West was just they were hell bent on somebody else got to go too. Even though they ain't had nothing to do with that situation. You know what I mean? That didn't have nothing to do with music. That was gang shit. So, you know, when you looked at it, you like, well, damn, why y'all fuck up? Big didn't do shit. He wasn't even involved with that. So why would he would have been still a target like that? You know what I mean? But that was just, again, goes back to the leadership. You inflamed a situation that now death is a part of it.
Well, yeah, and it went both ways. I remember
Yep.
I interviewed Consequence, and he was at a Def Jam party, and Ghostface was there, and he saw Bone Thugs and Harmony, who, even though they're not from the West Coast, they're signed to Eazy-E,
Yeah.
and he picked up a champagne bottle and threw it at one of their faces, and it ends up hitting this other dude in the face and fucked his whole face up, and then like a whole fight breaks out, but it's once again down to the whole East Coast, West Coast thing. Like,
Yeah.
when a New York dude saw West Coast crew, they suddenly bugged out, and it was just going back and forth. And you know, I remember when I interviewed Tretch, he blamed it on that Vibe cover, you know, with Biggie and Puffy on the cover, and it said East versus West on that cover. That was the first time it got framed that way.
And see, that's why you got to go back and look at it like it was such a pivotal time in hip hop, because now we're going from an industry that went from BET to selling to now we're doing it nationally to now the actual, we're going up a step above the source, and now we're talking about vibe. And this is supposed to be the new, you know, standard of hip hop. And I think that it kind of just put light on the whole situation when I think if people had just ignored it, it would have went away. But you went and highlighted it, which made you brought everybody in the United States involved in it, and it made everybody choose in hip hop who they was rolling with, and everybody at that time loved Big as much as they loved Pop, but it was just the whole shit of the two leaders of the two crews are straight going at it. So I just feel like when you look at it, both leaders of the crews lost because they lost their star players. So
Yeah, I mean, because that next year in 1997, Biggie gets killed.
yeah,
And, you know, I can honestly say with all the people I've talked to on and off camera, I'm still not quite sure who killed Biggie to this day. The Tupac story I know, but the Biggie murder, I honestly don't know. It's still unsolved, and it could go too many different directions.
I would just say this: me being at that party and reading that party as soon as I got into it, I told my dudes like I was like, "Lo, let's go." He was like, "Huh?" I'm like, "Let's go." I instantly knew when I started walking through the party and understood, and then I think Nate Dogg got into it with some folk. And and then the party started changing. You know, in LA, the party could be live and then it should get dark. And it did that. It went dark. So when I seen the FOI and then the gang members, when I seen everybody face change, and they was totally, as far as LA as a community, watching Big and Puff in that party, celebrating like that. They celebrating the album, but the West took it as you celebrating the death of Pop. You know what I mean? So that happening that night, shit, man, everybody was all in on it. That's why you don't know the true history of what really happened behind it, because in LA's eyes, you shouldn't have did that. You shouldn't have. So whether it was wrong or right, it's gonna be put into the gang, book of rule regulations. So in regulations, we got to do something. So I think that that was the only way to even the score for everybody involved. And if you think about it, bro, Hollywood went black after that. Like, it just died. You got to remember all the stuff that was going on in LA at the time. You got John Singleton, everybody just doing movies. Black Hollywood is everything. And after Big got killed, it just seemed like Black Hollywood died. You know what I mean? And it still never recovered. You know what I mean? You either had to go corporate or you had to figure it out. And I look at the music business and I say, man, look how much we lost as a culture by those two dudes leaving at that point in time, So yeah, I've lived through so much of it, and from Pop, from Soulja Slim, from Pimp C, music has been this shit has been like the streets, man. On my regard, you know what I mean? Because it's like few of my friends really gone. Few of the people that I really did my first stuff with gone. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I never just took music as being something that was you could play with, because I know how emotionally involved people are about music. So, directing it in a negative place, I've never just been a fan of that. So to watch Death Row at that time being such a musical giant, to destroy all that over nothing. You know what I mean? You kind of look at it and you like, the death of Death Row really messed up the West. It kind of like they hadn't been able to they didn't get back on their feet till Game showed up. And the 50 Cent movement, you know what I mean? Like, that's when the West got a little more light and started coming back. Eminem joined the team and Dre back, you know what I mean? So you got to look that even Snoop couldn't do it by himself, you know what I mean, after that happened. So I just look at us as individuals being in this culture that we have to understand that music is forever and so is death.
Well, that next year, '98, you guys dropped your second album, Still Standing.
Still standing.
Black Ice featuring Outkast, was that the biggest song off the album?
Possibly. It's just depending on who you're talking to. To us, like, we had never seen, when we dropped Get Up, They Don't Dance No More, if you think about it, it was the beginning of the crunk era. When that record came on, people tore up the club. Then you had 666 Mafia tear up the club. Then you hear Here Come Lil Jon. It was like, it was an energy with that record that was about being crunk. Now, as far as like when we dropped Black Ice, that record went national because now you have Outkast involved at that time. And yes, that record is kind of like one of our biggest records off that record. Still Standing was a beautiful record for us because we was able to really show people that we was better than just one album. In the music business, it's not about your first album, it's about your second album. So, when a lot of people got lazy because they got accepted on their first album, their second album wasn't no good. And we always knew that the second album is the album that tells the audience and tells the industry that you might be here to stay. So it was important.
Well, that next year, '99, you dropped your third album, World Party.
Yes, that's when shit started getting crazy.
Get Rich to This, that was my jam on that.
Get Rich to This that was the first record that blew on the West for us. That was the first record that Goodie Mob was not just in the hood with the gangsters. We had finally reached the radio. so that was our biggest commercial album. What's so funny, a lot of our core fans, I don't really like that record. I'd be like, yo, I don't know why. Like, we was doing something different. But it was crazy to us because as soon as we dropped the record, we sold 800,000 the first month. That record went platinum damn near out the gate, and we never toured on that record. That's because at that time, we dropped Get Rich to This, L.A. Reid and Babyface sells LaFace in the middle of our record. We go from having a record coming in a bass to nothing overnight. So after Get Rich came out, it really kind of left us up in the air because, again, LaFace is closing downtown Atlanta and Buckhead, and LA's going to Arista, or going to run a record label in New York. So it kind of put us in a very awkward situation. And LA offered me a deal and he offered CeeLo a deal. We both took the deals. I took my deal, but I just felt funny because I felt like if we both put a record out at that time, in my mind, I was like, it'll never be another Goodie Mob album. Because really at this point, we're being pitted against each other to see which one is going to be just going to sell. You know what I mean? And at that time, I just felt like, yo, you know what? It was the new emergence of great artists like Ludacris. And I was like, yo, let me back out because I don't do it like that. So let me back out. And Luda kind of took that whole space up. CeeLo came out with his solo album. I went to Koch, opened up Goodie Mob Records. We dropped a Goodie Mob album on Koch Records. I dropped my solo record, which was, Stepping Out with Sleepy Brown, top 40 independent record. So for me personally, I survived. You know what I mean? The next thing I know, I'm on the bus with Nelly. I go do Sweatsuit. That's 8 million, 9 million with Grills. Me and Ali do another deal with Universal. We dropped the Kinfolk album that does almost $250,000. And we on tour all over the world with Nelly. So, that whole time was just, it was a blur because I'm thrust out into this world and this industry that without a base.
Well, yeah. I mean, wasn't it after World Party that CeeLo left the group to go solo?
Yes.
And I remember when I interviewed Cujo, he said, I can't be fake. I was upset when CeeLo left the Goodie Mob.
True.
Was everyone else upset like Cujo? Or was
yeah,
it
everybody was upset. It was just the way that it happened and the way it was done. You know, we got a tour with Black Eyed Peas, House of Blues tour, Low Doesn't Come. And that's when it started. It started with a Power 105 show that we had to come to LA and do a Super Bowl party with Get Rich. We had put an artist named Backbone on the record. Backbone did not show up to go to LA to do the record. He wanted to go to the Super Bowl with the Falcons in Miami. So this your big opportunity, and you want to go Super Bowl. So understand this pissed off a member of my group. He gets off the plane. He pissed off. Next time it's time to go on tour. He like, you know what? LA just gave me a deal. I'm cool. And man, Goodie Mob, we lost that deal with William Morris. So it was kind of like all the way back starting over. You know, going to deal with Koch, Alan Grumlot, trying to let him see the importance of having a Goodie Mob. I bring him a record with 3,000 produced and on the record. He only wanted $50,000. This record could have made millions for him, but he didn't understand the value. So I came with Sleepy Brown. We still had a top 40 record, and I kept Goodie Mob alive during that time. So it was just a place of growth, a place of trying to figure out where you are in this business, and it was a time for us that we had to understand exactly how we was gonna stay and eat. So it was a growing process for me, but one I needed.
Well, yeah, I mean, in 2003, you dropped a solo album, Mutant Mind Frame, which had Steppin' Out on it. And I remember that same year, that's when Outkast dropped Speaker Box.
Yeah.
And The Love Below. And I Love the Way You Move with Big Boy and Sleepy Brown was somewhat of a similar record to Steppin' Out, right? I mean, in terms of the overall...
It was totally. I did Steppin' Out. Me and Sleepy did Steppin' Out. We took it to Stankonia. Big heard it, and then you had the emergence of I Like the Way You Move. And
right.
At that time, him having the actual system behind his record, it turned into a monster.
Yeah, I mean the video didn't hurt either. The video was the video was nice, especially from a male perspective.
It turned into a monster. It was like,
yes.
But I mean, at the same time too, when you looking at it, it's like, hey man, this Sleepy Brown, this our OG, both of our OGs. This is Organized Noise. Hey man, we can't help what the people love. And then at the same time, Koch just wasn't dealing with the same kind of budget that the guys were dealing with LA. So. I did as much as I could do.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, because on that same album, that's when Andre had Hey Ya, which was a diamond record. So like that's all getting kind of pushed up to the top along with everything. So it's kind of hard to compete against something like that.
Yeah, it wasn't no way to compete against it. That's why I had to go ahead and take my ass on over there to St. Louis and get with old Nelly them. Yeah. And then, it was cool. I did. That was just such an amazing time, Vlad, because what people don't understand, even in that time, Goodie Mob had gotten back together to start to record a new album. And just like we sitting here talking, we recorded like two or three new records, and Danger Mouse just happened to send CeeLo some records while we was in the studio. So while we in the studio, he was like, yo, Danger Mouse just sent me some records, man. I met Danger. You know Danger from Atlanta? I said, I ain't even know Danger from Atlanta. He said, Danger Mouse from Atlanta. I said, okay. So he goes in there, he puts the thing in, and he said, I like this song right here. He goes into the studio. Our engineer, Graham, at the time, he was like, well, just, put your idea down. He sung Crazy down one time. Straight.
Wow.
We said, okay, all right, see y'all tomorrow. He sent it to London, to Danger Mouse. He comes back to the studio about 3, 4 o'clock and say, Gibby. I said, what? He said, man, I got to go to London. I said, what you mean? He said, man, Danger Mouse went to the radio, BBC, and played it on the radio. It's a smash. And I ain't see CeeLo for 5 years after that conversation.
Right.
So that's like kind of like how it was going then. It was kind of like everything was so sporadic. Our base, L.A. Reid, Babyface went back to L.A. L.A. went to New York. It was like, and the emergence of trap music started.
Okay, so in 2004, you dropped the album that we're talking about, One Monkey Don't Stop No Show.
Yeah.
And that album does not do as well as the previous albums.
No, it doesn't do as well as the previous albums. We're dealing with a lot during that time, bro. Like, my guy have an accident, you know, doing it. Yeah, Cujo has an accident during that time.
Yeah, he loses his leg.
Yeah. We emotionally is just trying to figure out where we belong at that time. You know, everybody was, you know, the whole city was, because, you know, so many of us had our careers in the hands of LaFace, from the producers, the artists, everybody, you know what I mean? So it was just a time of trying to figure out where Goodie Mob actually, you know, belonged in the music game. But, you know, a lot of people, we took a lot of flack for it, but, you know, One Monkey Don't Stop No Show is something that we always heard old people say when we was kids, you know, like, and I think that when CeeLo wasn't in the group or wasn't a part of the group, they used that as a way of saying, you know, they got beef. And to be honest about it, yes, we were mad. We was upset, but at the same time too, having vicious or malicious feelings toward him, that wasn't it. It was just hurt that you wasn't with us at the time. You know what I mean? But, you know, like, you can't go to them albums and find no diss record toward CeeLo. You know what I mean? Like, so if you think about it, we was just only hurt because we were family. But, you know, we were family more than we were business. So that's the reason why you never heard us going to the studio and doing disrespectful shit, because we wanted our group to always come back together. And that's what it eventually did. Natural.
Right, but now, didn't you leave Goodie Mob after that album as well?
Yes, because that's during that time, me personally, I'm going through a lot. I get a divorce, you know how that go. You know, you lose money and shit. You know what I mean? So, you know, I'm going through the mental shit of like, oh, shit, I'm losing shit. What the fuck? You know what I'm saying? So I went through that little phase for a minute and was just mentally distraught. And, man, got myself back in trouble again. So I had a warrant for my arrest and all that kind of shit. So I had to leave Atlanta for a minute. So while I getting the lawyers trying to make sure, you know, I'm right when I come back, I meet Ali. And on Sunset, you know, just I'm walking down the street, just kicking it, just trying to stay out the way. And Ali pull up on me like, yo, Gipp, what's up? And I'm like, what's happening? He was like, man, me and Nelly got a house up on Sunset. Let's go up there. So, you know, he picked me off of La Cienega, and we go up into one of them houses off Sunset. And, man, we started recording that night. And we recorded where I was on the Dirty Entertainment, you know, album. That went gold. Nelly's album went, you know, a couple of platinums. And, you know, then we just toured around the world. That was the first time I went and did an actual tour of Japan, Yokohama. And I did an actual tour all of Australia. So, you know, Nelly them and Ali them gave me the platform to stay alive, still do my music from Goodie Mob. And it rebuilt my confidence as far as an artist that I could survive, you know, the place that I was in during that time.
Right. During that time, you were on Grills, which was a big record.
Grills. Grills happened. We was in Atlanta. And, you know, all us hanging out, JD, Jazzy Faye, everybody hanging out, and we kicking it. And, man, JD called us one day, was like, yo, come to the studio, man, I got something for you. And we heard Grills, and we jumped right on it. We jumped right on that record. And that record, to me, was kind of like my first introduction into being on a pop rap record. You know, that's the first time that somebody called us. Like they called Nelly, and it was like, yo, they just played that shit in L.A. 5 times back to back, and he was like, oh, it's a hit, and it was like, to celebrate, we went and got a private plane and went to Aspen and kicked it for the weekend with Nas and Khalees and everybody, all in the snow. So we was having a good time, eating cream brulee, you know what I mean? We were like, we back, so I was good.
Well, around the time of Goodie Mob's fourth album, weren't you guys at the Vibe party where Dre gets attacked and then the whole Young Buck stabbing incident happened?
Yes, we were there. We was totally right behind Dr. Dre. I watched the whole incident play by play. It was like, it was funny. It was like everybody came in to sit down. Everybody's sitting down. Everybody's getting positioned. Okay, commercial break. Then all of a sudden you start hearing Suge Knight here, Suge Knight here, Suge Knight here. So Suge walks into the room, fires up a cigar, and just looks around. And then the next thing you know, this guy in this like all blue little shirt, he walks over there to Drake, and you could tell like he had a pen, piece of paper in his hand. He was kind of like trying to, let me ask for an autograph. Drake kind of looked up at him and was like, I know it's some bullshit, but I'm going to go on and do it. You know what I mean? I could tell he knew what it was. He just didn't know how far this was going to go. Because he had his girl with him and shit. So I know he was kind of like, I know he ain't going to go too far, but he going to do something. But, bro, he signed it, and then, bro, just stepped back and hit Dre. And when he hit Dre, it was like, everybody was like, yo, like, what the fuck was that? You know what I mean? So then it just go crazy. You know what I mean? And we instantly, like, everybody kind of, like, grabbed Mo, Nelly, and we kind of like got in the corner against the wall. So it was like St. Louis, Atlanta was together. Of course, I know Buck from Nashville. I know Buck. Buck got right into it. You know what I mean? He wanted to put it down for Dre. Make sure, you know what I mean? At least let him know that, hey, man, some folk here gonna put it down for you. You know what I mean? So it being in that situation, I knew that situation also was gonna boil over into a confrontation with Jimmy and Suge. That was it had to happen because that was something that Queen Latifah and Shakim and Jimmy and them had put together, trying to, just kind of lead the vibe thing. I mean, the source thing along. Let's do this other kind of award show and kind of put some prestige on it. And I think they was very proud of how it was starting to roll out. And I think that, Suge them put the black eye on it after that because it never came back.
Yeah, and then Suge gets shot. Suge gets shot in Miami a while later, and
True.
There's the rumor about Jimmy Henchman's involvement in it. We're not sure.
I mean, I don't know if it's a Jimmy Henchman involvement in it. I just think that at that time it wasn't a good time to be in Miami. I was in Miami. I'm shooting a video at this time. Me and Ali was shooting a video at that time, and I think where we was at Opalaka. We was shooting a video in the hood, and we heard about Suge being down on the beach at a party. I got a call, and Jimmy was like, come see me. I went to go see Jimmy. When I got there, Game was there. And while I'm with Jimmy and Game, we got the call that Suge got shot. Did he have anything to do with it? I don't think so. I didn't see him do anything. He's sitting there eating dinner. Suge, you down there amongst a lot of Haitians and you got a lot of beef. So, a lot of times, in these situations, people get involved that don't even know the people just to be able to see if they can get some money out of it. So I just think that was just the streets, saying they go Suge Knight and let me get off on him. Because they shot him in the leg. So, if you really wanted to hurt somebody, I mean, he's so big. I mean, it's not hard. So to shoot him in the leg, that's just, just to let you know it can happen. But you're going to feel it. Same situation he had with Akon.
Yeah.
Same situation.
Yeah.
We don't want to kill you, big bro. We just want to just, slow you down a little bit, let you know what you're saying. You just can't do everybody like that now.
Yeah.
So, same situation.
Well, in 2013, Goodie Mob drops Age Against the Machine.
Age Against the Machine. Mm-hmm.
Janelle Monáe shows up on that record.
Yes, Janelle Monáe shows up on that record. Dungeon Family. She showed out, man. It's just a crazy time we did Age Against Machine because at that same time, CeeLo is having so much success with The Voice and so much worldwide success as just a solo artist. And it put us in a place where we felt like we couldn't make the old Goodie Mob simply because we had to protect the image of where CeeLo was at the time. So you got a lot of different songs that you would have never heard Goodie Mob do. But you got to understand that sometimes when artists are in certain places in this industry, it's like our hands are tied because of the people that's connected to us. So what we do, whether it's right or wrong, we try to make music for people in that audience. And a lot of times you will miss by trying to do things like that. And I think Age Against the Machine was a great album. It was a few great moments in there, but as far as a complete thought, I just don't think it reached its potential. I just think some of that stuff was just not accepted by our true Goodie Mob audience.
Well, then in 2020, you guys dropped Survival Kit.
Survival Kit.
7 years passed between these two albums.
7 years passed. Yep.
Right. No Cigar featuring Andre 3000.
Yes.
Was definitely a standout on that album.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that song.
I think that Survival Kit, for me personally as an artist, to have Chuck D on your album is extraordinary. You know what I mean? Secondly, to have Organized Noise produce the whole entire album again after we've been together so long was another great thing for us because the pandemic was kind of like, the pandemic really helped us remember family because we all had been just everywhere for the past 20 years. So the pandemic was the only time that all of us were like, damn, we all in the same room again. It was just amazing because it was like, okay, we about to. What people don't understand, Atlanta never shut down during the pandemic. We was riding this motherfucker wide open.
Yeah, I know. The restaurants were all packed. Yeah, everything. Yeah, Atlanta
you
did not care about the pandemic at all.
Your wings at Magic City at 2:00 in the afternoon, it was still going down. So
still going down.
It was an opportunity for us to do an album in a controlled setting, in a studio, with all of us together, and with everybody around us caught up in the pandemic hoopla. We was kind of like, it was the first time that we was able to sit down as a crew again and say, let's do an album and do it from this situation. So to me, like Survival Kit, if we never do another album, we did that album together. And if you go from Soul Food to Survival Kit, at least you can understand that Goodie Mob as a group, as a crew, we never lost ourselves. We stood on what we came in the game on.
When you saw CeeLo falling off the horse recently,
oh Lord,
what'd you think?
Oh Lord, oh Jesus. Wait a minute. I'm in the middle of. I wake up in the morning and my phone just going, it's jumping off the dresser. I'm just like, what is going on? Like, I get on here, they were like, yeah, CeeLo and brought a horse in the club. And I'm like, wait, what you talking about? No, he brought a horse. A horse in the club. A horse is not supposed to be in the club, first of all. Not around music and not around loud lights. No. So, Timo was with him. I watched the video. I spoke to him. I was like, I'm just glad you didn't get hurt. And that was one of the most, that roll off that horse up onto your feet was so dynamic. I don't think anybody would ever think that that it was fake. You know what I mean? People might think you rehearsed that shit. You did it so good. So, so I'm just glad didn't nobody get hurt. Y'all know my little brother, man. He lives he lives for stunts, man. The king is a stunt king, man. And you know, I just say, hey man, everybody not built for it, but he is. I mean, y'all didn't see him do it. He brought the gold man to the Grammys, man. He'll do he up for it. So for me personally, man, I'm just like, hey man, long as you didn't get hurt, another stunt goes, hey man, you got viral attention, and let's move on to the next thing. Let's see what the next stunt gonna be. So,
There we go. There we go. All right. James Worthy.
Yo.
Number one, man, congratulations from transitioning from your professional basketball career to music. And by the way, you look amazing for 62 years old, man. I don't know whether you're
crazy.
whether you're drinking baby blood or whatever you're doing, man. To look this good at 62 years old is great.
It's amazing. Yes, sir.
All jokes aside, man. So you grew up in Queens.
Yeah, I did.
And you had a musical family.
Yeah, well, you know what? I never really came from a musical family. Like, a lot of what I learned was trial and error. You know, being from Queens, I was just always around music. I was always around greats, great artists, great songwriters, great musicians. Like, you know, I was, like, down the street from Jam Master Jay. You know what I mean? Right by, you know, Coliseum and Jamaica Ave. So, you know, that was my whole thing is I just wanted to be in entertainment. And whatever that was going to be, whether it was music or, you know, management or whatever it was, I just wanted to be in the fold. So that's where it stemmed from, just learning from, you know, the greats.
Okay. And you got your first publishing deal with Sony at 16.
Yeah, I did. Crazy. Crazy.
wow.
You know, at an early age, I was, again, around so many people. So, like, my mentors were Whodini, PM Dawn, you know, Bobby Brown, Whitney Houston. Like, you know, these were people that I was around at an early age. Even Bobby Jr., you know, rest in peace to him. He was one of my best friends growing up. So I got in the industry early. And me being in these settings with these people, it afforded me opportunities to work on projects. And, you know, I think Sony just kind of took a hold of that real early and, you know, granted me an opportunity.
Well, let's talk about the whole Bobby Brown Jr. thing.
Yeah.
Because you guys were very close.
Yeah.
How old were you when you guys actually met?
We met when we were 14.
Aha.
Yeah.
Okay. So this was, what, 2006?
Yeah. Late 05, top 06, yeah.
So you did an interview where you talked about Whitney Houston's death in 2012. You said, to be honest with you, she was one of those people that was clean when she passed. She was clean from drugs for quite some time, so we definitely thought there was some foul play in the situation.
Yeah,
You know?
I mean, she was
And,
definitely
you know, you've
clean.
always heard, you know, sorry to interrupt you, but, you know, you've always heard of the drug issues with Whitney and everything else like that. So a lot of people assume that, you know, she was still going hard at the time that she passed away, but you're telling me a different story.
I mean, you know, everybody got their own views and stories. I mean, you know, there was some people that was kind of in and out, you know, throughout her journey and situations. But with me, like, me having, you know, interaction with her, like, her later days, she got clean. Like, she didn't want to do it no more. Like, I think she was just more so just tired of just the industry. And she was just tired of feeling tired, right? And, you know, she was going through the whole situation with, you know, Bobby's family and her family and trying to get back, you know, the family dynamic and, you know, all the kids trying to be back together, you know, all that stuff. So it was just unfortunate how she passed because I do feel that there were a lot of foul play going on. Like, it was just a lot of miscommunication and handling things the wrong way going on that it ended in that.
Did you ever get to actually work with Whitney on a music level?
Yeah, we've had sessions before. You know, I always tell people that she was like an auntie. She was like your auntie or like your mom. Like, you know, she would always, you know, tell me what I need to be doing and what I don't need to be doing. And she even taught me ways on how to make my music better, just on the production and the songwriting side of things, even before I became a solo act. So just having that is what kind of inspired me to just, broaden my horizons genre-wise.
Yeah, I mean, I worked with Rodney Jerkins, who produced, hits for Whitney as well as Grammys with, and hits for damn near everybody. And he told me flat out of everyone he's ever worked with, Whitney was the best female vocalist of all time. And he said that if you want to debate it, show me someone who sang the national anthem better than her.
Right. I can't think of anybody else.
It doesn't exist.
Yeah, I mean, she sang like water. Like, it was flawless. I mean, she can sing, at the highest octave in her sleep, which was just so amazing to me to watch it in real time.
Well, Whitney dies in 2012, and then Bobby Christina dies in 2015.
Yeah.
And then Bobby Jr. dies in 2020.
Yeah.
So the amount of death in this immediate family is just frightening.
Yeah. I mean, it's so unfortunate, and it broke my heart, you know what I mean? Because I knew all three of them. And Bobby Jr. was the closest to me, and he was like a brother to me. Like, literally, I remember we lost touch for a while, and he had just moved back to LA just probably about a month before he passed. And we reconnected, and he was off of social media for a while, and he popped back up and started going live on Instagram, and I would always like to watch him just to see what he was doing. And we reconnected, and we were working on his album that he was working on with his father. And literally 3 days before he passed, we had a virtual studio session, just working on stuff, and after that he passed. And still to this day, I don't have a clear answer on how he passed. Like, there's always speculation of, okay, well, he overdosed, he had a bad cocktail, this happened, that happened, but I never really got a full grasp of what really happened. But it broke me because I literally talked to him 3 days before he passed. And it was just so unfortunate, and such a great talent.
Yeah, man, it's sad. Bobby Christina died from what seemed like a drug overdose. I interviewed Landon Brown, Bobby's son, and he definitely blamed Nick Gordon over that whole situation. And then in 2020, Nick Gordon died from a heroin overdose.
Yeah.
So it just seems like the drugs really kind of tore a hole in that family.
Yeah, I mean,
because
there's so
everyone
many
died
things.
very. I mean, even Whitney died relatively young, and
Yeah.
and Bobby Christina and Bobby Jr. died very young. So it's none of this is from natural causes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's why I feel like there's so much foul play going on with that whole situation. And, I used to think that it was a curse on Bobby for whatever reason. But, to me, that got to be the strongest man I ever seen in my life for the things that he's went through, and losing, 3 people that close to you like that. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, the first track that you produced that got released, was that a Young Berg, Electric Disco?
Yeah. That's, man, that I remember when Twitter first came out, and Twitter was hot, and this was, of course, before Instagram and all that stuff, and this is when direct message just got popular, with DMs and all that. So literally, he was on Twitter, and at the time, I think he had The Business out. He had Sexy Lady and Sexy Can I with Ray J going crazy. So at the time, he was working on a mixtape series called Twitter Music. And he just would put his email out on Twitter just for producers to send tracks to. And I just sent them a bunch of tracks. I shot him a message, sent him a bunch of tracks, and Electric Disco was one of the tracks that he chose for the mixtape series. And, from there, it just kind of went from there.
Wow. I mean, that just shows,
Yeah.
how sometimes you just got to shoot in the dark. You might actually hit something.
And
Right?
I'm early in the game. Before that, I was working in Houston with Swisher House, and working with Mike and Paul and guys out there. So when I left Houston and came back to Atlanta, that's when Twitter popped off, and I was just trying to see what would stick, and he responded, and we kept going from there.
Well, I mean, you went on to produce a bunch of people over the years. Black,
Yeah,
Robin S.,
yeah.
Black Youngster, Fetty Wap. You and Sydney Starr had something.
Yeah, boy. She's something else.
Yeah. You could say that. You could definitely say that.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that led to what we have today, which is the Gipp and Worthy project.
Yes.
And but didn't you produce something for Gipp and CeeLo like a while back?
You know what? I don't know how people got that misconstrued with me.
It's called Shine Like Gold in 2014.
I don't know.
For some reason, your name was associated with
man.
it, but then when I looked at the credits, I didn't see your name.
Yeah, I don't know who
otherwise,
put that up there.
Okay.
That wasn't me.
And it's so
Okay.
funny that the actual guy, I talked to Freak the other day, he was like, yo, who is James Worthy?
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know. He was like, shit, I ain't meet James Worthy. When did James
Yeah, when we
Worthy
do that.
So I don't
They
know.
got to fix that one. But I love that record, man. That's one of my favorite Gipp records. Yeah.
There you go.
But even before we got to Gipp and Worthy, when I decided to become a solo act, I was actually in a group before that. The group was called Kings X2. Myself and another gentleman, his name was International Noah, from New York as well. And we put out one single called Wine For Me, and this is the first time I was ever on a song as an artist, period. Didn't produce it or anything, I just wanted to be the artist. And we put out the single, and the single debuted at number 10 on the Billboard. And I think that was kind of like the time where the label started looking at me differently, because not only just my first time coming out as an artist, but to chart that high as a debut, I think that was kind of a shocker for a lot of people. So once I did that, we disbanded the group, and that's when I went solo, and I dropped a single called Move, which featured Whodini. And after that is kind of where I started leveling up as a solo act. And then, a couple years down the line, we get to this project, and I met Gipp, 2 years ago? I met Gipp 2 years ago at my studio. I had a session with Corrupt one night, and me and Corrupt were working on this record called Top of the World. And I finished laying down the hook, and Corrupt finished laying down his first verse. And he came out the booth and he said, James, what do you think about putting Big Gipp on this record? And I hadn't met Gipp yet, probably just in passing here and there, but, we never formally met. So I said, well, I think that's different, because with that style of record, I never heard him on nothing like that. So I said, well, let's do it. So he called him, Gipp pulled up half an hour later and wrote his verse on the spot. And that's kind of what birthed our relationship. Working together, and throughout the whole time, we've been putting a catalog of records together, and that's what birthed Gipp and Worthy.
Right, and Top of the World became the first single.
Yeah, that was the first single. Yep, ironically.
Right. Ironically. And there's a remix with Corrupt, right?
Yeah. So literally, we just kind of took what we did initially, and we made that into a remix too.
Right. And 112 is actually on the project as well.
Yeah. Shout out to 112.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, wasn't 3 6 Mafia supposed to do something with you guys as well? But then Gangsta Boo passed away?
Well, with Goodie Mob, we had just started talking to the booking agents about putting a down south tour with Goodie Mob and 666 Mafia together. And the situation with Boo happened. It's crazy, Goodie Mob and 666 Mafia, we just got so much history together because we just broke ground for each of our cities at the same time, during that time. And we did some of our first, promo tours to the West Coast together. So us, Boo has always been a part of Dungeon family, always lived it. When she wasn't in Memphis, she was in Atlanta. She was very, very close to my ex-wife, Joy. So her and Joy used to be always together. You probably have seen them out there in L.A. together. So yeah, Boo's always been very, very close to me and mine.
She was south.
Oh no, that was a friend of mine, man. She had been to my house and everything. I saw her maybe a month before she passed. We were at this Onyx event, and man, she was dope, man. She was crazy. She was
man. She was everything.
Improper, but that's what made her her,
Yeah, it's like Gangsta Boo and then it's Lola.
Right. Yeah. Two shall not meet.
So it's like, man, I tell people, man, like she was just one of a kind. She was so special, and regardless, everybody that knows Boo know that when Boo on her shit, she on her shit, and I heard, I remember I talked to Ball, and she went to 8 Ball and MJG's little thing on Beale Street for New Year's, and yeah, man, Boo. She was trying to just get a little something going to the house, man, and just these streets is just not where you want to get anything from, because if she had just did a little more investigation of the streets, Gucci Mane artist had just died. So that let you know that it was a real bad batch that had come into the city that claimed not just her life, but a few people's lives. So that's just, again, another warning for us all in this world right now. We living in a culture where, the drug dealers don't care about their customers, man. Like, that was like the number one rule, care about your customer, man. But now it's like, they don't care about nothing, man. So I don't know. We're living in a very different world these days.
Well, yeah, I remember you had talked about in some of your interviews how Goodie Mob is one of the last groups that are still together, still alive, still doing things. You look at, for example, 3 6 Mafia, half the members have died from drug overdoses and aneurysms and so forth in their 30s and 40s.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Not that old. And
yeah. I think it's just the lifestyle of Vlad, you know what I mean? I think Juicy and Paul, the greatest thing they could have ever did was leave. And go and approach life from another way. And I think, you got to have at least a self-worth about yourself, because, the wrong mistake can be your last one in this world we're living in now. So, we in this business called music, and yes, it's rock and roll, but man, you got to understand that your fun could turn into your family's tragedy.
You had touched on this before. The YSL RICO case is happening in Atlanta right now.
Yeah.
You're a fan of Young Thug.
I love him. I think he's dope. I think he one of the best.
Mm-hmm.
He one of the best.
Yeah. But when you talked about some of the shit that y'all were doing back in the day, there was no social media, there was no cameras. But now you have a whole different ball game, and when you look through this indictment, Instagram post, song lyric, DM, text message, you know what I'm saying? Recorded voice phone call. There's so much, you know what I'm saying? It's kind of like when it comes to these court cases, everyone likes to say, it's snitching, it's the feds, it's social media, it's the actual media. But when you look at what usually happens in trials, most people usually get convicted for things they say themselves.
True that.
Okay.
And I think that what we have to recognize now is that it's just another energy in this music right now that we have to recognize, and we have to recognize that this shit is infested with the police. So, with that being said, the things that we did in the 90s was some even worse, you know what I mean, than what these kids are doing, but it wasn't no social media. And then another thing is people didn't talk as much then, you know? So when you're living in this new culture where fame is given to anybody that can move the internet, it's like so just seeing the actual film of Woody being in the actual in a conversation with police, and you seeing the situation and the situation he in, I felt like it was a lot of fabricating going on, and if it wasn't it's the game we play. It's like when I look at Young Thug and I look at Lil Lucci, this is a situation that really started with them, and it's just grown over a 10-year situation where it was back and forth between these two neighborhoods. And I'm just looking at it now that it's the same situation like with a Pac and a Big. It's like if y'all two could have just came together and had a conversation and could have, deaded a lot of this, and even if it couldn't have been no conversation because of the death of Nut, it's like, let him live and let me live and we'll leave each other alone. You know what I mean? But if I know both of them right now sitting in the situation they're in, I know both of them really wish that they could rewind the clock and change this situation, because it's so many people that depending on Thug, and it's so many people that depending on Lil Lucci. And both of them being great artists, and me meeting them right before they blew up, it's just like, I just get upset with the youth, because I be like, y'all don't understand, bro. Like, we didn't get the kind of money y'all got to come into the game. You know what I mean? So I'm understanding with having a lot of money, it gives you the ability to do a lot of things that you couldn't do when you didn't have money. And all I'm saying is that as an OG in this game, I just got to just tell these kids, like, man, just be more careful with your opportunity. Because as you see, as soon as Thug get in trouble, 300 is sold as a company. And the same person that you probably had that relationship with, it can or it cannot be his business no more. Because I'm not in business with that anymore. So, that's what I have to just let the kids know, is just that y'all got to take better care of your opportunities, because with this 360 deal, it's set up for them to just gain as much power and much fame as possible, and then these people are setting it up to just sell it off. So at least just extend your opportunity as long as you can, because the streets don't care who get it. You know what I mean? So it's like, for both of them to be sitting in jail right now, I just hate it, because I know that if they both get out this situation, I bet you they're going to move a lot different.
Well, I think on Art of Dialogue, you said these big name rappers be telling Gunna isn't alone. Puffy was the police and Suge was with the police.
They are with the police. Why you think they ain't? Suge had what? Everybody, this fact that half the police station was bodyguards.
Right.
It's fact that Puff, you got policemen with you. I mean, like, it's all of them. I look at it like this. All of them have been in situations where they've been put into that room. And if you get out that room, most of the time, you got a number to call. You know what I mean? So, I'm looking at, just their situations when Puff thought he was going to jail for the situation in the club. Mm-hmm. Like, come on, man. Whenever they got you and you feel like you cornered, the first thing you're going to do is say, well, let me work with you. Yeah. Let me work. Then let me walk out of here. Let me work with you. I might send you 5 in time, but just not me, please. So it's like, I understand it. But, I mean, if you look at it right now, the hip-hop police, all that stuff that was going in New York, dudes getting targeted, dudes getting framed, set up. It's like, man, the police is involved with this shit. So, you can't go to a town, get security, people who can carry guns and badges, and then do illegal shit in front of them. What the fuck? It's like, what the fuck? Like, so it's like you got to just really just look at real life and get out the entertainment bubble and then maybe you could figure out that, like, hey man, we got company around. Certain things we shouldn't do. You know what I mean? But I think as artists, we get so caught up in fame and being the artist, we forgetting that our homeboys around us still operate like we in the streets. So now that we living in this social media time, it's like, it's scary because you're watching these labels invest in that. You're watching them go to each and every city and look for the hardest and most out of control artists of all time. You know what I mean? To give them a shitload of money and just sit back and watch and see, like, we're going to watch this train wreck. You know, that's what it looks like right now. It's not that you're investing in artists that you think going to have a long career. You're investing in artists that's going to keep this social media buzz up, this fantasy of the street life. And if you look at just the industry right now, we talk more about the drama than we do about music.
Well, yeah. I mean, my prediction with this whole YSL situation is this. Like, for example, part of the indictment, when you read through it, was they're saying, you know, because at one point YFN Lucci's mother got shot. Mm-hmm. And there's a verse that Young Thug is talking about shooting someone's mother. And now he don't mention me. Yeah. Which they're trying to tie to the whole case, whether it's true or not. Now, if Young Thug takes a plea deal, and in that plea deal, he says, yes, this lyric is about YFN Lucci's mother, Lucci's mom could now file a lawsuit against 300 Entertainment, which is now owned by Warner Brothers, saying that you guys now have officially co-signed and promoted songs that ultimately got me shot. I want $100 million.
And you're going to lose.
Who's going to lose?
They're going to lose. Simply because, no, they're going to lose going against the label. Simply because the corporate in between all of it is Leo Cohen.
Well, Leo Cohen is no longer at 300. He's at YouTube.
So who
he left, and now he's the head of YouTube Music. But Warner Brothers now owns that. So, and what I'm saying is, in this kind of environment, I mean, you got to understand, a woman sued Geico Insurance because she got an STD from a dude who had, and they had sex in a car. Yeah. And she got like $10 million from Geico because she got an STD from a dude that happened to have Geico Insurance. You see these types of lawsuits and these types of settlements that don't make a lot of sense, but they set precedents. So I think that once someone successfully sues a label over an artist's lyric, you're going to have a domino effect on major labels where everyone's going to look at these types of street artists as major liabilities, and it's going to start to change things on a macro level. That's what I think.
I think they've already started doing that. That's the reason why now they're starting to invest in the AI artists. So you got to look at what the game is doing. The game is doing this. We have purged the streets for the last 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years. We've purged the streets. We've also created artists. We've turned executives into artists that might not know how to do music personally, but they know how to put music together. If you look at that, that is damn near the blueprint for an AI artist. So now we don't even need you anymore. We'll create your voice, create your image, and if you think about it, at the beginning of this year, last year, they tried to actually sign a computer artist, and the industry was trying to rave about it, that it was dope. But then when they found out...
there's a bunch of racist stuff. With that artist he got dropped. I think he was signed to Atlantic, actually.
So just think about the bullshit. It's almost like they tried it. Like, just think about if that actual situation had got feet and started running. Now, that gives them full access to say, you know what? No more live artists. Whole music business is AI. Now, we don't need the 360 anymore. There's nobody to the 360. So you got to look at an artist like me, or artist like James. We are the ones that know how to really create this shit, turn what we write into a movement, and do it from scratch. We are the ones that they're trying to get out of this industry. We are the ones that they're trying to disregard. Because soon as you take where you don't need the actual artist or the actual producer anymore, then shit, the record company makes hand over fist. So you don't have to pay no royalties to nobody, see nobody dies, and the computer man stays around for 100 years.
I mean, yeah, that's already happening in like South Korea and I think Japan. They have these like computer generated like, you know, teenage singers that go and do concerts,
Yes.
you know, and everything else like that. And online, they make tens of millions,
Right. So
you know.
Just off the streams alone.
So think about it, Vlad. If somebody just woke up in the morning and just took your voice, and now it's a computer Vlad, now we don't need Vlad no more. It's like, huh? Now you could just take my voice and do that, and I have no ownership or no nothing, my rights, my image. It's like you gotta understand what this is. It's like if you're signing a piece of paper for a few $1 million for a person to own your likeness, your voice, and everything about you. As a young artist, we know, and we could damn near calculate that the young artist gonna fuck up the money. He gonna fuck up the money, and then he might not even make it to another record. So again, the artist has to understand that, well, what if you don't come back again? Understand that to the day you die, these people own you. So you have to just understand what you're giving up for these few little millions of dollars. Because if you break down the taxes that you got to give away for it, you still wind up with a few couple of hundred. Mm-hmm. I mean, so at the end of the day, it's really, and they're never giving you their money. They're only giving you the money that they went to the actual pipeline and just paid you. So even in their investment of bringing you up and putting you on a new platform, they still haven't spent their money. They still haven't spent their money. They've only given you the money that you can't get to. So just understand what you're giving away when you're getting them few little millions of dollars.
Right, because you're not actually getting, you know, when someone signs $1 million deal as a new artist, it's really just $1 million loan.
Yeah,
True.
with interest.
So
With
when
interest.
you look at artists like Russ from Atlanta, who told you, hey man, I didn't ask them people for nothing. I went to the bank and got me a $250,000 credit line. Because somebody around you is smart. You know what I mean? So guess what? You went and took $250,000 you got from a credit line, went and gave $100,000 to radio, $100,000 to press, and now you're a worldwide artist with no ties to nobody, and nobody has you in a 360 deal. Now that's called smart. But does that kind of artist get elevated and talked about? No, because he outsmarted the system.
No, listen, about a year ago, I had an offer. It was like around $10 million from, it was the equivalent of a publishing deal for YouTube, where basically they gave me this big check up front for my YouTube royalties for a certain number of years. And I'm like, shit, 10 million, that's a lot of money. I mean, this is a serious conversation here, you know? And I remember I got my guy involved in the deal. He used to be the head of Columbia Music, you know, who ran Columbia Publishing. You know what I'm saying? And we went through this whole process. And at the end, when I was doing all the math, I'm like, all right, so I take this money and I'm going to pay 25% at the end of the day for this money. The current interest rate is only like, 5%? So why would I take this when I can just take a loan for a lower interest rate, not give up any future nothing, own everything flat out? And I remember I'm talking, you know, to my man who's part of this deal, and I'm like, yo, out of the hundreds of millions of dollars worth of deals, publishing deals that you did when you were with Columbia, how many artists have walked away from these deals? He said 0, not a single one. Everyone has always taken these publishing deals, 100% of the time. And I'm like, wow, that's interesting, because I guess for YouTube, me being able to predict a hit interview is a little easier than trying to predict a hit song, right? So on that point of view, I think I have a bit of an advantage. But still, he's saying that, you know, I mean, listen, there's artists who are consistently coming out with, you know, hit songs and you know, have big fan bases that still take these deals, like Eminem and whoever else, because the mentality in music is, let me get this upfront money. Let me get this upfront money. And let me keep getting these deals and get more upfront money. But the people like Russ have figured it out, like you said, where it's like, well, why take this upfront money? I am now tied to this company to give them a bunch of money, which is way more than I could get from a bank.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And it really was just like, oh shit, like it really kind of opened my eyes. And yeah, when you see these artists, you're right, they owe that money back to the record label. And on top of that, the record industry is based on almost a 90% failure rate. So, I mean, you know, when you sign 10 brand new artists, 9 of them, you will lose all your money on those artists.
True.
So you have to have a deal for that 10% that's going to favor you to pay for your 90% of failures. And the artist that does really well is upset. It's like, oh, I got a bullshit deal, like the Megan Thee Stallions of the world. It's like, oh, this is bullshit. I'm paying too much. And it's like, well, there was a greater chance of you making zero money than you making these millions.
Right.
When we invested in you. So it's
really dependent on the person because, I mean, Vlad, I've been in the business 25 years and I've never signed a publishing deal.
Wow. Okay.
So you're looking at a person that survived without one.
Right.
So, you know, like for the kids to say, yo, Gipp, man, I might not never see this money again. Shit, how you know? You're not even giving yourself a chance, and you're letting the industry plant kind of like a failure rate in your mind of who you gonna be. Like it's almost like, goddamn, like, okay, you might not see this $10 million again. You better get it. But it's like, yeah, but all the shit that come along with it. Guess what? I'm in a $10 million debt. What if the president get fired tomorrow and the A&R that like me to sign me tomorrow gets fired? Now, I'm in a $10 million debt. Yeah, I feel like I got $10 million in my bank account, but guess what? Take you off TV and the radio, and hey, man, that $10 million turn into 10,000 real quick.
Yeah, I mean, the worst story I ever... The worst story I ever heard, you know, in any of my interviews was when I interviewed Quentin Miller, and he said he signed his first publishing deal for like $30,000 to Tricky Stewart and The Dream. Yeah. He went on to do like I think 9 Drake records.
Yeah.
He did not get one penny from any of those Drake records.
Damn, that's why Tricky rich.
Heard that, yeah.
That's why Tricky getting all that money. Damn,
That's
Tricky.
why Tricky's rich.
There
you go, man. There you go. It wasn't until recently he had to almost like start over with these Nas records and everything else like that. But all those Drake records, which made millions and millions and millions of dollars, he did not see one penny out of that shit.
Ooh.
Wow.
Whoa.
Now, James, you've signed publishing deals before.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's publishing is your ownership. You know, is what stake you have in the actual product. Like with me, I've been fortunate enough to have a pretty hefty percentage in a lot of the records I've been involved with. So, you know, when I signed my publishing deal, it was favorable in on my side. Like I had a 70-30 split, which was crazy back then. You know, they don't do that damn near no more. But, you know, it afforded me different opportunities, you know, so now I can have records being submitted for sync licensing and film, television, commercials, you know, whatever we can get the income. That's what happened with that. So, you know, that was my whole objective of even signing a publishing deal, was just let's get the catalog as big as we can make it.
That's amazing.
Well, Gipp, you've talked about, you know, various verses, you know, like for example, you talked about, you know, Jermaine Dupri and Puffy, and you've always given it to Jermaine Dupri in terms of overall skill level. You know, recently DJ Envy was talking about a potential, you know, verses, you know, an imaginary verses between 50 Cent and Lil Wayne. You guys, with your point of view, who would you say would win that versus?
Lil Wayne.
Why is that?
Yeah.
Simply because his catalog. His catalog
Too long.
is too long. It's too long. And I love Fifth. I love him to death. But he would need about 5 of them goddamn Get Rich or Die Trying albums to go against Wayne. Simply because Wayne got mixtapes that are motherfucking, they go. You know what I mean? That fucking part of culture. How many people, how many records he's had? Well, you go from just a Cash Money situation, like, he's on Bling Bling to start off is one of your biggest records. Like, that shit changed culture. Like, he got so many records that he's on that changed culture, and I think 50 got that good run of that first and second album. But, you know, Wayne has the Cash Money catalog, then he has, you know, the Wayne, then we go to the Carter catalog. It's just, he just got too many records, you know. And then he was so about trying to be as lyrical and as ahead of everyone as Jay was looked at in the South. You know, he wanted that position, he wanted that seat, and I think he earned it, and he got it eventually. You know what I mean? That he's one of the best that ever do it lyrically from the South. So if you just look at his catalog along with his features, it's real hard to beat him because he got a lot of radio hits and rap hits, and then just straight 2 Chainz. You go all the way down the list, 2 Chainz. It's like, you know, he got so many hits that just hit in so many areas that I think Fifth got a good strong 10. Got a good strong 10, even might inch out about 13, but Wayne at least sitting on 40 records that you know and touch the radio. Because if you look at just the number 1 hit list, who's had the most number 1 hits, it's Future, Wayne, Drake. I mean, it's no New York artist in the top 5. So you gotta look at that just as a reference point of how many records, how many number 1 records, and it's kind of like Drake, Future, and Wayne, and they all and those 2 right there, they damn near can
and
possibly.
Wayne went pop too.
Yeah,
he went crossover.
Yeah,
so like, you know, I don't think 50 got a lollipop.
Yeah. Lollipop was
wait. In the club was a giant record. Giant record.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a giant record, but okay.
Absolutely.
After In the Club, you got the Game record. The Game record was big.
You got Candy Shop. That's
you
a
got
700
Candy
million
Shop
streams.
Was
big. PIMP, 600 million views.
Disco
that
Inferno,
first album was really just
hits.
hit after hit after hit.
I mean, but like a Millie, like I don't know if 50 could go against that.
Okay, all right. I'm gonna switch it up for you though.
Right.
I just thought of something. Here we go. A versus with Lil Wayne and Eminem.
Ooh. Well, that's probably the only He probably the only one you can pull out for Wayne, Vlad.
Yeah.
You know, can't really do nothing about Elvis, man. That's Elvis now. You know, Elvis can go sell out the Coliseum, ain't got to drop an album, never. So, you know, it's just, hey, man, hats off to M, bro. I just always feel like a lot of people want to take it from him, and I look at it like this. Any kid that can come from the rough side of Detroit, the trailer parks, and walk his ass up into St. Andrews and get into ciphers with known gangsters and gain your respect, you got to take your hats off to that. And to me, if you put him up against any rapper you and put him on the track with, he ain't ate him.
Yeah.
He ate him.
Yeah.
Who you want to name? Who you want to name? He ate him.
So who was the last beef he was with? What, MGK?
Yeah, it's like he ate him, bro. Like don't play with him. Leave him alone. He's proving the point. Like and nobody mad at him. You got to wait till the next lifetime.
Right.
You
I mean,
gotta
I
tip your
actually
hat
looked
to
up
that.
his. I looked him up on Spotify. His top 10 songs on Spotify. 7 of those songs have over 1 billion views.
1 billion?
1 billion with a B.
Jesus. See, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And
too
that's
giant.
that's the same thing you would say about 50. Like a lot of people say this person bigger than 50 in the States, but if you go around the world, M and 50, Outkast, it's not too many people that just go around the world and do big old festivals and people understand and heard the music and love the music. I don't care who you is. That's a very, very small
And
group
don't
of
even
people.
speak the language.
And don't speak the language. Like,
Crazy.
you know what I mean? So, nah, bro, like, Eminem, shit, the greatest tour on the earth would probably be an Eminem and Drake tour. Wow. What kind of building that need to be in?
Okay, all right, hold on. Okay, Eminem. Okay, so hold on. This is actually a good point. A versus between Eminem and Drake.
Hey,
I'm all for that.
I think that would be kind of like the biggest verses you could put together because those two have broken the ceiling on what it is that a rapper is supposed to be able to do. And I think Drake, you have never seen an artist stay hot for 10 years straight. That man,
The only person I put with a run like that would be Future.
and Future.
Yeah.
Future is the only one. So
Yeah.
outside of those two, I don't know if anybody else equipped to deal with Elvis, aka Eminem. Yeah, I just don't. It's not too many people got that kind of catalog or got that kind of range. And yeah, you could say because of this or because of that, but hey, man, them songs. And when somebody write a record that breaks the skin, it doesn't matter who wrote it. A hit don't gotta have a face or a name to it. It's a hit. And that man got too many to name at this point.
Yeah, and Future came out of the Dungeon family.
True that. And just for him to just be up there right now selling out tours all over the United States with AG, with Alex them, man, like it's a beautiful thing to see, just like, wow, like from the Dungeon, Outkast, Goodie Mob, and then for the last installment, you see Future. Like, that's why I tell people all the time, bro, like, I'm not tripping over nothing, because the Dungeon is alive and well. You know what I mean? They just free band. You know what I mean? It's just,
Meathead and free band.
you know what I mean? And man, Shawty know, man, I love him to death, man, because he out here really, really standing on this A-Town shit. He pushing the envelope. And I think one thing that he learned from just watching Goodie Mob and Outkast is never stop. Never stop going in the studio, you know. Both of us, you know, I think Goodie Mob and Outkast, we dealing with a whole nother thing because we dealing with fame. Like, damn, this is what famous feel like. And then, damn, we got to keep going. But at the same time, I could tell you that, shit, bro, like, we got tired after that 10th year, that 11th year, you know, like, you know, it was hard, you know. After the 10th and 11th year, and really putting out album after album after album, that's why you didn't get another Outkast album to 2010, because we had so much success, you know, before you had the emergence of, you know, other members of the Dungeon. So it's like, it's fun to sit back and watch everything Future's doing right now. It's fun, because, you know, it's almost like, wow, like, you know, if didn't nobody pay attention, he did. so like, you know, it makes us, and it gives me also the reason why I think me and James' album and our music is just so different is because I can look at him and what he doing, and it gives me space to go over here and do something else. Like, I'm not supposed to be doing what Future and his generation is doing. What I'm supposed to do is find a space that is grown and still represent hip-hop. And I think that's what Gipp and Worthy is, because this is the first time that I just got on 5 songs that just spoke to women. You know what I mean? And I think at this point in hip-hop, it has to be a level, like, I'm looking at this, like, Gipp, you now in the area of soft rock, like rock and roll. Like you a rock and roll at first, now you soft rock, pimp. You got it's Phil Collins and shit. So I'm on that. Like it's no age and no ceiling on talking about love and talking to a woman. And I'm looking at it like right now in hip hop. That's one space and one area that me and James can really run down, and we don't have no competition in it. So I feel like, as an older MC and an older person in just music itself, I'm comfortable in that space. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have to go on. Like, you think about it, you be like, okay, that's the difference between Goodie Mob. It's like, people ask me all the time, like, how do you feel about doing your music now? I said, you know what? That's a great question, because if you think about it, when Goodie Mob came out, they was mad at us because we was talking like we were grown men and we were kids. So now me being a grown man, being on stage doing what we wrote as kids, I feel totally comfortable because I wrote it in the mind frame of a grown man. So Goodie Mob is booked to 2024 all over the world. So for me personally, I'm just glad that every time I get on stage, I don't feel like an old man doing my shit. I don't feel like I'm an older artist. I feel right at home. So to have this with James, to find a whole new place and be accepted, again, as I look at my career, I found another way to prolong my career and reinvent myself. And that's special.
Well, you've talked about in your interviews how you like the level of fame that you have, where you could go to a grocery store and, go shopping, and, maybe someone might come up to you and ask for a picture, but you could generally live your life.
Yeah.
Now, Andre 3000, he's done some interviews, we talked about after Hey Ya, he just couldn't deal with the publicity. He didn't like it. And I think he said something to the effect of, he said that fame is like the amount of life that you sacrifice for your career, or something to that extent, yes. Where you don't see him out. You see him occasionally show up with like a flute, and then like he'll disappear for the next 2 years.
Yeah. And he right out there beside you, Vlad. He right out there. He right out there around the corner.
Yeah, exactly.
Just go to Venice Beach. You might catch him.
Right.
You know what it is, Vlad? What people don't understand is that when he did Hey Ya, it put him into the stratosphere next to an artist that we would look at, next to artists like Lenny Kravitz. Like, now you into that rock and roll hierarchy, whereas people are looking at you like, wow, you just went and damn near did some shit like the Beatles, like right now, and put some rap shit on it. Like, fuck. You know what I mean? So the industry was like, boy, if you give us 10 more of these hoes, well, woo. So, but it was just almost like, coming from just the fame of just being a famous rapper to now you in them Lenny Kravitz boots. You know what I mean? And it was like, oh shit, like this is a whole nother thing. Cause when you get up in that area, you need to know who been playing guitars and this, that, and the other, and that and this. It's like it's part of common conversation. But him coming like, man, I did this shit the way I do shit, and it turned into this. And to be 6, 7, 8 weeks #1 overseas, like not too many artists can say they ain't did that before, and that you produced and wrote the record. So I just think that all of the press that came along with him being able to turn into this artist and having to take on the workload of being an artist at this stage, it made him be like, man, damn this shit. Like, hey, man, I came in here to rap, man. Y'all tripping, man. You know what I mean? So you got to understand, he kind of like, I don't want this shit, bro. Like, I'm cool, you know what I mean? That's what it took him so long to even go on stage and perform the album, because it was so big at the time, bro. Like, they probably turned down $100 million just on shows. You know what I mean? At that time when that record came out, it was just like, you got to realize he put the record out. We in LA, they win 6 Grammys, and he went dark. Because everybody wanted him then, and he was just like, oh, nah. Dre do some shit like go to Japan and stay for a month, just living in the city, just chilling, just walking around, having dinner at the coffee shop. Just because don't nobody know him. Ain't nobody bothering him. And I just think that he finds comfort in just being normal. And I think a lot of people don't understand that, you know, being in this business, man, like once you get to a certain level of fame, man, the old you is gone forever. And that's just a sacrifice that you have to take on in the music business. And I'm gonna tell you, man, even it's some great artists out there that's got to the point of where I just don't want this no more. Like I'd rather just go on, just get me a little something in the country, drive a little pickup truck and go to the corner store and leave this fame shit alone, because, you know, it's not about just the music anymore. You know what I mean? And I think that's what he got. Like, you know, this shit about what business you got and how much millions you made and who you married to. It's just so much shit that started happening in his true life. And I think all of our lives, that it just made him be like, damn, bro, like, the only way I can just be normal is to walk away. Yeah. And you know what I mean? So, you know, a lot of people just be like, wow, how'd you walk away from the money? How'd you walk away from the money? It's just like, bro, everybody don't live for money. Like, the man been rich since he 18. Money ain't the situation.
And once you reach a certain amount of money, you do hit somewhat of a plateau.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, all right, I live in a mansion. I drive whatever I want to drive. I got millions in my bank account. You know, am I willing to sacrifice to get to $1 billion? Because that's not an easy jump. Right. To go from a millionaire to a billionaire is not something that just naturally happens.
Right.
It has to be a lot of sacrifice, and it has to really, you have to give up a lot. You know, like, for example, I've never liked fame myself, which is why I'm always behind the camera. Yeah. You know, I mean, I like to be able to move around without security 24/7. But, you know, and I've tried to hide behind that. But, you know, the longer I do it, the more my pictures just show up for me walking around and, you know, weird shit happens. But it's like, I try, you know, people ask, why are you behind the camera? Because I'm trying to maintain a lower level of fame as opposed to a higher level. If I really wanted to be famous, I'd be in every one of my interviews, like Adam 22, you know, or in academics. But I choose not to, because that's not really what I want to do out of my life. I mean, I'm going to turn 50 this year. Like, I'm cool. I want to be less famous than I am right now.
Hey, man.
You know, but it's not possible, unfortunately.
Vlad, I never wanted to be a solo artist. Like, all that kind of shit. Like, bro, like, I've always just been about the group. Like, let me do my little bit and let me get out the way. Like, you know, it's just better that way. And, you know, that's why I look at just dealing with fame. And even when it comes to me and James, I'm like, this shit done turned up. Like, in the last month, we dropped this album. I ain't did this much press in a long time. And I'm just like, damn, I'm a little older. The shit. I was like, God damn, we got another one? You know what I mean? So just like, for me personally, I'm like, I'm understanding that the workload increases, you know, and having to be camera ready and all that kind of stuff. When, you know, when you creating, man, you could be in pajamas. And you know, so it's like, and that's how we did this album basically. It's like, he would be like, yo, I got this record, Gipp, and I would just go home to the country, get on the porch and write it, watching the dog or something. You know what I mean? And then one day he called me, he was like, Gipp, I think we got something. And I'm like, huh? He was like, I think we got something. And he put it together for us. You know what I mean? So, because to tell you the truth, Vlad, an artist in my position, I just really do it when a younger artist asks me to do it. OG, I love you, man. Just fuck with me. I do that. You know what I mean? It don't got to be about money. But when it's gearing up to get back out here in the system, like if it wasn't James, I don't know who would have been able to get me to do this. Because it's like, it's so much to come along with it. It's like, and then I'm like, if I say the wrong thing, then I'm hurting people's feelings, and I'm just like, bro, like, you gotta understand, I'm from a whole nother galaxy. This shit is all the way new to me. So I'm fine. I just wanted to just prove to the industry and prove to other brothers that might be from my era and still here that, hey, man, there is no age limit on doing great music. It's just about you channeling and getting back in the groove of doing it. You know what I mean? And I just wanted me and him just to prove, like, James and Gipp went in the studio and created a vibe. And I just wanted to prove to all the real talented people that it can happen. Again, this is the real magic. Not when 30 people in the room trying to give you the records and tell you what to say and do this and take 5 people to write one verse. It's like, no, when truly talented individuals connect, then you have the magic of real music that people will live and die by.
Mm-hmm. That's what it is. Big Gipp and James Worthy, man.
Yes,
appreciate you guys coming in.
Thank you.
Very dope project. For everyone who's watching this right now, definitely stream it on your favorite service, whether it's Spotify or Apple Music or YouTube and so forth. And I just love to see the OGs of, you know, the people that I listened to before I got into the music industry. When my love for music was just so pure. You know what I mean? It wasn't about, oh, can I interview this person, or, you know, this person talks shit about me on social media, so I don't like them. You know what I mean? Which happens once you're in the music industry. You got to meet them, that they may not have shaken your hand or whatever. It's like, yo, I'm just, you know, when Goodie Mob's first album came out, when Outkast's first album came out, I was in college. I just loved hip hop. I'd been a lifetime hip hop head. I'd been a break dancer. You know what I'm saying? Like I bought Run DMC's first albums. I bought, you know, The Message when it first came out on vinyl, and to hear these monumental songs that are still important today, to see artists like you continue to put down dope projects, to work with people like James and bring in that new energy of, like, you know, where, because James's stuff is not traditional rapping. It's really more kind of a singing,
Yes,
kind of vibe.
Yes.
You know, and to really kind of combine those two, where Big Gipp still sounds like Big Gipp. He's not trying to sound like a 2023 Big Gipp. He still sounds like the Big Gipp we've always known and loved. Yeah. And to hook up with a younger artist and producer and to create these types of projects, man, I think is dope. And I want to continue to hear, you know, you guys doing stuff like this.
Oh yeah.
Vlad.
Yeah, we got a lot more.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vlad.
That's what it is, man. Until next time. Peace.
Yay.